My parents had always hinted that I'd overstayed my welcome at home. The talk about moving out started when I was 16, and by the time I turned 21, the hints had turned into outright statements. I didn't take offense. I just couldn't scrape together enough money for my own place, until one day my father told me he'd found a solution. He handed over an old room in a dormitory that his company had given him years ago and never used. A strange gift, to put it mildly, but I was grateful. Finally, my own space. The dormitory stood on the edge of town, set apart from the other buildings, hidden behind a row of old poplar trees. A 4-story block with cracked plaster and broken windows on the upper floors. The first time I walked up to it in the evening, what struck me most was how dead it looked. Not a single light in the windows except 2 or 3 on the ground floor. I walked in through the only entrance, where there must have once been a security desk, now just a stripped table and a broken chair. The stairs creaked with every step, and the walls were covered in scraps of old notices, tenant meeting announcements, water shut-off warnings, kids' drawings taped up there, probably 20 years ago. My room was on the 2nd floor, number 9. The door was slightly open. Someone had left it that way, airing the place out, I guessed. Walking in, I saw high ceilings, faded floral wallpaper, and a decent amount of space, which I already started picturing filled with my own things. A neighbor caught me on the stairs, a stout man in his 50s wearing a sweater with deer on it, despite the warm weather. He held out his hand. "Marcus. Live right across from you. You're the new guy, I take it." "Adrian," I answered, shaking his hand. "Yeah, just moving in." "Well, welcome. It's peaceful here, just don't pay too much attention to the quirks. Everyone's got their own bugs in their head around here." He laughed at his own joke and walked off down the hallway. I had no idea then how literally his words would turn out to be true. The first few days passed in the usual moving chaos, furniture, boxes, meeting the neighbors. There weren't many tenants. Besides Marcus, our floor had an elderly woman named Gertrude, a quiet old lady who spent her time knitting by the window, and a young couple, Oliver and Sabine, students renting a room across from the elevator, which hadn't worked in years. The 3rd floor, I was told, was almost empty, only one tenant left up there, an old man nicknamed Gaspar. People talked about him reluctantly, with a strange tone, like something uncomfortable. "He's a bit particular," Sabine explained when I asked. "Collects stuff. Says he's taking care of something important. Don't bother him unless you have to." It sounded like typical neighborhood prejudice against a recluse, and I didn't think much of it. Every old building has its own mysterious tenant, after all. I spent the first week settling into the room. Marcus did most of the helping, turned out to be a real handyman, fixed my outlets and even brought up an old but working fridge from the basement. "Where'd a fridge in the basement come from?" I asked. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff left down there from former tenants. Some moved out, some, well, it varies. The basement's like a storage room for our past. Marcus shrugged and kept dragging the fridge down the hallway. I hadn't seen the basement yet, and that phrase, for some reason, stuck in my memory. About 2 weeks in, I started noticing small, unpleasant things. Waking up one morning, I found dark, damp stains on the floor by my bed, like someone had spilled something dark and greasy. The smell was sour, like rotten grass mixed with something metallic. I wiped it up without thinking much of it. Old building, probably a leak from somewhere above. The next morning there were more stains, and next to them I found something small, like a tiny dark capsule, hard to the touch, like a plant seed. Out of curiosity, I crushed one between my fingers. Inside was a slimy white mass with thread-like veins. Disgusting, but I just washed my hands and forgot about it for a while. The real worry started when, at night, I heard sounds from the wall, faint scratching, like a mouse clawing at wood. I knocked on the wall with my fist. The sound stopped, then came back a minute later, this time further away, near the corner of the room. I pressed my ear against it and heard not one source of sound but several, scattered along the whole wall, as if something with many legs was moving in waves behind the plaster. In the morning I told Marcus about it in the shared kitchen, while he made coffee. "Ah, that's normal," he waved it off. "Old building, noises are just part of it. Mine scratches too, I've stopped paying attention. And the stain on the floor, and those dark, seed things. Have you seen that?" Marcus froze for a second with the cup halfway to his mouth, then set it down on the table slower than felt natural. "Could have leaked down from the attic." "Roof's got a leak," he said, not looking at me. "I wouldn't worry about it, if I were you." The answer didn't reassure me. If anything, something in his tone told me he was lying, and badly. A few days later I ran into Gertrude in the hallway, carrying a bucket of water and a rag, clearly having just cleaned something in her room. "Morning," I said. "Need a hand?" No, thank you, dear." She held my gaze longer than felt normal for a casual encounter. "Tell me, child, how long have you been here? Have you noticed any stains on the walls yet? In your room?" I confirmed it, and her face went pale. "Then it's already time to start thinking about moving out," she whispered. "This isn't a place for a long life. Or at least not a long, peaceful one." She didn't explain any further and hurried off to her room, locking the door with 2 turns of the key. I started asking questions more carefully, watching my neighbors more closely. I noticed that both Oliver and Sabine wore long sleeves even in warm weather, and once Sabine took off her sweater while cleaning, and I caught a glimpse of several small reddish marks on her forearm, like insect bites, arranged in an almost perfectly straight line, as if someone had carefully traced a dotted line across her skin. "What's that?" I asked without thinking. She quickly pulled her sleeve back down. "Allergies. Don't worry about it." I started finding similar marks on my own skin too, on my ankle and a bit above my elbow, small hardened spots that itched at night, especially when I lay closer to the wall. What bothered me most was the third floor and the recluse, Gaspar, whom everyone spoke about so deliberately vaguely. One evening, coming back from the store, I decided to go up a floor, with no real purpose besides curiosity. The stairs to the third floor were darker, the bulbs either broken or just burned out. The hallway stretched into half-darkness, identical doors on both sides, most of them, clearly, long-abandoned rooms, marked with private property, seals or just sheets of paper taped across in an X. Gaspar's room was at the very end, and already a few meters away I could smell it. Not the usual old man smell of an unwashed home, but something damp, sweetish, and rotten at once, like the smell of an aquarium whose water hadn't been changed in ages, mixed with the scent of raw meat. The door was slightly open. I didn't dare go in, just peered inside. The room was drowning in half-darkness, lit by a single lampshade-less desk lamp. Old aquariums and containers lined the walls, filled with dirt, sawdust, rotting leaves. Something was moving in some of them, slowly, in waves. Suddenly a creaky voice came from behind me. Curious? I turned and saw Gaspar himself, tall, unnaturally thin, with sunken cheeks and eyes too lively for his age. Dressed in a faded robe, he held a cloth sack in his hands, from which something seemed to be crawling out. "Just passing by," I stammered. "Everyone's just passing by." Gaspar stepped closer, and I noticed the skin on his neck and arms was covered in the same small marks, only far denser, almost merging into a solid web of scars. But really, everyone's part of this. Some just don't know it yet. He walked past me into his room and shut the door without any further explanation, leaving me standing in the dark hallway, turning his words over in my head. They chilled me more than the night air did. The following week, Gertrude disappeared. At first, people talked about it cautiously, said she must have gone to see relatives without telling anyone. But her things stayed in place, her knitting left unfinished on the chair by the window, and her room door turned out to be unlocked. I worked up the nerve to go in with Marcus, who no longer bothered hiding his anxiety. Gertrude's room looked like a small storm had passed through it. Furniture shoved aside, dark streaks on the carpet that resembled the same stains from my own room, only far larger in area. In the corner, by the radiator, we found a pile of torn clothing, and disturbed by our presence, several dark creatures darted out from it, roughly the size of a thumbnail, many-legged, with a glossy oily shell that shimmered a dark brownish hue. I caught a close look at one before it vanished under the baseboard. What struck me most, not the number of legs or the glossy shell, but the fact that its back bore a clear pattern resembling a tiny human ear, complete with all the curves and folds, as if nature had copied a fragment of a human body and stuck it onto the bug in place of an ordinary pattern. "God," Marcus whispered, backing toward the door. "This has already gotten out of hand." "Out of whose hand?" I snapped. "Marcus, what is going on here? What are these things?" He stayed silent for a long time, rubbing his face with his palms, before finally answering. "There used to be a lab here," he said quietly. "A long time ago, under the old regime. They were researching something to do with parasites, with tissue regeneration, or something along those lines. When the lab got shut down, some of it stayed behind in the basement. Containers, samples. The local authorities just moved the dormitory in without ever properly cleaning the site. And these things came from there. They mutated, adapted. At first they only lived in the basement, quiet, not bothering anyone. Then they started spreading. Gaspar's been keeping an eye on them the longest out of all of us. Somehow he knows how to contain them, feed them, keep them at a manageable level. But lately something's changed. Maybe there's just gotten to be too many for him to handle alone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And you all just live here, knowing that? Why hasn't anyone called health inspectors, the police, anyone? You think we haven't tried?" Marcus gave a bitter smile. "The building's officially condemned, listed in the paperwork as unfit for habitation. It just got forgotten in every registry. Who's going to come out here if, as far as the system's concerned, this building doesn't even exist?" That night was the worst of all. Lying in bed, I felt every small sound from the wall as a threat. Every creak of the floor felt like footsteps of something with too many legs. Around 2 in the morning, a sharp itch on my ankle woke me, and when I turned on the light, I saw one of those creatures crawling out from under the edge of the rug, heading straight for my bed with an unnatural certainty, as if it knew exactly where it was going. I jumped up, grabbed a book off the desk, and smashed it down on the bug. The crushed body left a dark stain on the floor with that same metallic smell I'd noticed before. Looking closer at the remains, I saw with horror that inside the bug, amid the slimy mass, was something resembling a tiny, underdeveloped human hand, miniature, fingers curled into a fist, no bigger than a grain of rice. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I decided to find out the truth once and for all and went down to the basement, despite my neighbor's warnings. The door wasn't locked, just propped shut with an old cabinet, which I shoved aside with effort. The stairs led down into darkness, lit only by my phone's flashlight. The air grew heavier with every step, thick with that same sweetish, rotten smell I'd noticed near Gaspar's room, only far stronger now, almost suffocating. The basement turned out to be much bigger than I expected, a network of connected rooms, some of which, judging by the tiled walls and remnants of metal tables, really had once served as a lab. In one of the rooms I found dozens of old containers and aquariums, similar to the ones in Gaspar's room, only much bigger, some the size of a bathtub. In the largest container, covered by grimy glass, I saw something that froze me with fear more than anything before it. There, among the dirt and rotting leaves, lay a body, human, or what was left of one. It closely resembled the corpse of an elderly woman, in clothes that looked like Gertrude's, except the body had already partly lost its human shape. The skin had taken on a waxy tint, and where the stomach should have been, a large, swollen cavity had formed, out of which, one by one, slowly crawled those same many-legged creatures with microscopic human features on their shells. I stepped back, barely holding in a scream, and right then heard that familiar creaky voice behind me. "I warned you not to come down here," Gaspar said, emerging from the shadows of a side passage. "What did you do to her?" I shouted, backing toward the stairs. "I didn't do anything," the old man spoke evenly, almost wearily. "She does this herself. The colony. It hasn't needed my control for a long time. I just watch and try to slow the pace down." Gertrude had been carrying larvae inside her for ages, same as everyone here. Same as you, by the way. You're already carrying them too. I instinctively looked down at my ankle, where the bites from the past few days still itched, and the feeling that something had just shifted beneath the skin froze me cold. "There's no cure for it," Gaspar continued. "The larvae are already in your blood. They wait until the body builds up enough of a nutrient environment for them. Some hosts live for years without noticing anything worse than the itch. Others, like Gertrude, the colony decides it's time to mature sooner." I bolted for the stairs, shoving the old man out of my way. He didn't even try to stop me, just watched with a calm, almost sorrowful expression. Running out of the basement, I ran into Marcus in the hallway, and he immediately understood from my face that I'd seen too much. "Now you understand why you can't just move out of here," he said quietly. "If you're already a host, moving won't change anything. The colony goes with you, inside you. This is insane. I'll go to a doctor, get tests done, I'll do whatever you want." Marcus shrugged, with the look of a man who'd long since gone through every stage of denial. "I used to run around clinics too. Tests don't find anything until the colony decides to show itself. Until then, you just live an ordinary life, like nothing happened. Sometimes I think that's even worse than knowing for sure." I packed up my most important things that same day and left the dormitory, telling myself I'd find a doctor, a specialist, some rational explanation and treatment for whatever might have settled inside my body. A few weeks passed. The tests really did show nothing. Doctors only found minor skin irritation, which they explained as an allergic reaction to household dust. I tried convincing myself that Gaspar and Marcus had simply been suffering from some kind of shared delusion, brought on by years of living in a condemned, toxic building, maybe poisoned by chemicals left over from the old lab, and that the whole nightmare had just been the product of collective hallucination from the exposure. But one night, after moving into a new, perfectly ordinary apartment in a completely different part of the city, I woke up to that same distinctive scratching in the wall behind my headboard, the exact same sound that had haunted me back at the dormitory. I sat up, pressed my ear to the plaster, and heard not one sound but several, scattered along the entire wall of my new apartment, where I'd lived without a single problem for 2 whole weeks already. At that exact moment, the itch on my ankle, which I'd almost managed to forget about, flared up again, and somewhere beneath the skin I felt a faint but unmistakable movement, as if something tiny had finally woken up and decided it was time to act. That was when I understood that the problem had never been confined to that old dormitory. The colony had long since spread beyond it, through people who'd moved away, through random visitors, through anyone who, like me, had taken old furniture or belongings from the basement, never suspecting they were carrying away a piece of something far bigger and far older than that decrepit building on the edge of town. Gaspar hadn't been containing the threat. He'd just been watching its slow, steady spread, through the whole city, maybe by now through the whole country, through everyone who'd ever so much as touched that building or its tenants. And now, sitting in the dark of my new apartment, listening to the scratching inside my own walls, I finally understood there was no escaping this anymore. The colony had never been in the building. The colony was everywhere we were.